Want to say welcome to everyone who's here. For those of you who don't know, um, I started the Women in Construction series with Thompson Consulting Engineers almost a year ago now, exactly. And we've provided a place for successful women in the architecture, construction, and engineering field to talk about their experiences, their knowledge, share some advice, career-wise, to not only support other women in our field, but also the men that we work with every day. And I would like to welcome Karen Reasor. She is a lighting designer and spec sales associate for JJM Associates, a local lighting rep agency, and she'll be joining us today. In her position, she assists architects, engineers, interior designers, and design build contractors in lighting selections and calculations for a myriad of lighting projects, such things as lighting churches, restaurants, site lighting, hotels, military bases, a whole broad range of project types. She got over 20 years of on-the-job training from multiple electrical engineers who were always supporting her and encouraging her to pursue her passion for lighting design, in addition to just teaching her the lighting theory and application. She began her career by answering phones in a small engineering firm in downtown Norfolk. And after leaving that firm for another job, she was invited back to learn how to become a draftsman and specialized in electrical power and lighting plans. After the company fell on some hard times, she moved to Clark Nexon and was given the opportunity to focus on lighting design, assisting electrical engineers in their projects. And in 2013, she joined JJM Associates and has been able to work with the wonderful design community, as she says, in Virginia on projects all the way from Roanoke to Danville and Richmond and beyond. Karen serves in Kempsville Baptist Church as a teacher and director of women's ministry and loves finding ways to encourage the women she routinely serves with. She lives in Chesapeake with her husband, daughter, and one very spoiled cat. I can say that that's awesome. I've got two of them at home myself. So thank you so much, Karen, for joining us. We really appreciate your time today.
Yeah,
Is,
yeah.
is there
Thanks,
anything
you.
you'd like to
Thanks.
add?
No, Celia, I think you pretty much covered everything. It's like, great. I don't have to say any of that stuff. No,
Awesome,
thanks.
perfect. And to the audience watching at home or in your office at lunch, we'd like to
Wherever.
welcome you to ask any questions that you might have as we go along. The meeting chat is open to all of you, and there's also a Q&A portion. You can type the questions in there, and as I see them, I'll try to get those questions into Karen as we're talking. Otherwise, we'll open the floor up to audience questions at the end as well if you think of things towards the end there. But yeah, we really appreciate everyone taking the time to listen in and Karen for your time here. And I think this one session is going to be a little bit different than others. We're going a little more technical this time, which is awesome. I love to see the development of this series in different directions. And depending on who I'm talking to, what you bring to the table is incredible. And I think it's going to be great.
It'll be
Let's,
fun. I
yeah,
hope it will be.
I'm sure it will be. But let's start off. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your interests.
Okay.
What do you do now?
All
How'd you
right.
get there? What draw you to the field? All that.
Okay. Interest. I love cooking, so and eating, of course. Love trying new restaurants in different places. Like to travel. Um, we haven't been a lot of places. We work keeps us pretty busy. My husband works with Sherwin-Williams in their specialized division for marine coatings or whatnot. So he stays pretty busy. I stay pretty busy. But we do like to do some little short trips. We just went to Roanoke last weekend. We love doing a little quick weekend getaway. So we try to get several of those in through the years and through each year. And then, so there's travel, there's the things we do with our family. We're very involved in our church, different mission projects and things like that, and serving on a daily, weekly basis. Um, the interest that was sparked in me in lighting was when I was working for the downtown Norfolk, a little place called Clark Smith. I got to work with an electrical designer, or he was more of an architectural designer, but did electrical work. And funny thing is, his name is Lee Fanoff. He was the former husband of Donna Fanoff, who was the
Oh,
owner and founder of Via Design. Yeah, so I'd met Donna a very long time ago, which she would not remember remember me. But so Lee is who really kind of got me started in lighting. We had a little project with American Eagle, some retail stores, and he said, "Here, take this and see what you can do with it. Use this as kind of your go by." And so he gave me an opportunity to just try something different, and I just fell in love with the process to looking at fixtures, putting things together, see how they did their drawings and see how I could mimic that. And just that's what really got me started with his little itty bitty retail shops for American Eagle. That he had a contract to do these renovations and new ones, and so that's what got me hooked on lighting, so to speak. And so I learned how to lay these things out. And way back then, we did lighting calculations by hand, so we had formulas and whatnot to do. So when the computer things shifted to the computer, I was given a computer and a book and the software, and here you go. So I'm self-taught in that as well. So the opportunities I've been given were all just, I took every chance I could to just pick up something new. And I ask an incredible amount of questions whenever I do any project, try to garner all the information I can. So that got me started. And then, as you'd said earlier, when that firm really fell on some difficult times, contracts didn't go through, then payments weren't coming. So I joined Clark Nexon, and that I did that for till 2013, and was laid off. And then I was looking around for something else. And funny thing is, I had toyed with the idea of looking at going into working with a lighting rep agency, because not to be ugly, I don't really care about power. So I like lighting. That's what I enjoy.
Yeah.
That was really developing into more of a passion for me. So I had heard from a friend of mine that JJM was looking for someone. I said, "I'm not a salesperson." He goes, "They don't really want a salesperson. They want someone with their kind of background." So I came in, interviewed with Jim, and I had interviewed with another company doing electrical drafting, and I did not like that environment at that particular place. And when I interviewed with Jim, and we had a really good conversation, that was the owner then, and I said, "You know what? Yeah, as long as you understand that you're not getting a salesman here. I know how to do calcs and put schedules together and do all these other things." And he says, "That's really what we need." And I said, "Okay." He goes, "Anybody can sell, but we don't have this segment of expertise." So that's how I got brought into JJM. So it's given me the ability to work on tons of different projects, everything from, a little bathroom reno in a warehouse to massive site plans. So I've done a little bit of everything in the realm of lighting.
Yeah, and how have you seen that skill transfer work? Like, what skills did you see from, you were in the consulting world, which is
Yeah,
pretty
yeah.
different from a sales
It
world.
is. It is very different. Yeah, because sitting on the consulting and the engineering side of things, you don't know how the back half works with how materials get from the factory to the end user, how all that stream works. And so then learning how all that works and how all those things fit together, and the impact that your wrong number on this spec sheet, how it ends up with the wrong product out in the field. Or if you don't double check your ceiling types, you have a problem on the job site. So there's this connectivity that I know when I was at Clark Nexon, I didn't think about beyond the actual design phase, getting all your pieces and parts together and sending it out, and then you're on to the next thing. On our side, we have to look at all the pieces of it and make sure that all the components that the person has asked for are actually the right components. Because, if it doesn't get caught on our end, if someone, specs a fixture and leaves off a finish or a mounting type, it becomes a problem in the field. And then that falls back on us. It's not the engineers. Sometimes it's engineers' issue, but a lot of times it's going to be on our side because no one noticed that component was missing. So and for me, I admit that is not my best thing. I love putting things together, but having to drill down into all the little nits and bits and pieces of the number, sometimes that trips me up. So I try to help out the designers that I'm working with and making sure I'm doing due diligence to make sure that they have thought of every eventuality, every piece that they're going to need, so we can be sure that we get the right material ordered. So that whole process is something that I'm still learning, and how where all those things work together, especially when we start getting into polls and all that jazz, which I don't get a whole lot into that. I rely on others for that aspect, and I'm more on the bigger picture items than the getting way down into the specifics. But I do know enough to know that sometimes those things can really cross up a project. When someone's said, hey, they want a recess. No, they can't. It has to be a surface. And then we have an issue. So, but I will say
Yeah.
this much. When those things do come up, I'm my the guy that runs our Virginia Beach office, Wayne, he is extremely good at finding solutions and making sure that that's really not going to be a hit on anybody. So we do all that we can to make sure that we're helping out our engineers and our end users and trying to find that solution so that nobody really loses. So,
Yeah,
and
definitely.
I'm proud of that. I'm proud of that.
Could you go into a little bit of detail about what your coordination looks like with an electrical consulting engineer? Because I know it's
Yes.
a bit different than on the mechanical side when I'm working with a rep.
Right,
I'd like to
right.
hear a bit more about that.
Yeah, okay, so I just got finished working with Michael Lally over at Hickman Ambrose on a large church renovation project. And he came to me at the beginning, which is great, and said, look, this is massive. I need some help in making sure that that we pick the right things in the right
Mhm.
locations. This is what the architect's vision is. Help me get there. Because the thing about lighting is it can be overwhelming because there are so many choices. So what I do is try to help distill those down into just a handful, so that you're only dealing with 4 or 5 distributors or manufacturers instead of 50. Because when people walk in and they think, oh, I can just pick this, well, maybe that isn't the right thing. So he's leaning on my expertise, and okay, this is the kind of thing you need here. This is the sort of fix you need in this location. You can use this type over here. And then we have to also, what we what JJM, what we always do is try to spend our resources where it's most important. If there's a way to manipulate that budget so that we can make sure that we're getting those high dollar, really high impact fixtures in those public spaces, then we're going to go look for ways to save some money on some of the more commodity pieces so that we can spend the money where it's important. So we can lend that kind of help to designers and make sure they're not picking out a $500 vanity fixture when we can get one for 100. So that I can go spend 3 on a chandelier. So
Mm.
these are the kind of decisions that we help designers make so that they can get the impact they want in their space and still stay within their budgets. So that is a huge help to engineers and end users, whichever side of that coin that we're working with. And that's especially relevant when we're doing design build, where the budgets are tight and we don't have a lot of leeway. On the design side, we what I would like to see is architecture and interiors and mechanical and electrical, that we work together so that lighting isn't the thing that gets cut first.
Mhm.
Because unfortunately, we see that a lot. We can go through and build this amazing space, and then the first thing, oh, hey, it's over budget. So you know what? We're not going to buy these fixtures from you. We're going to go to Amazon and buy them all. That has happened. So I'm not, that unfortunately, and that's a lot
Yeah.
of time and labor that we put into something, but the end users are oftentimes just short-sighted in seeing that when you do that, you have undercut the design intent that the architect spent that time on, that mechanical has spent the time on, that interiors has spent time on. You have undercut the entire project by taking this component and reducing it to a bunch of nuts and bolts. So that's,
Mm.
again, I would like, maybe architecture could scale back wall coverings in some space to give us a little more room in the budget. Or possibly we can look at a different type of a plumbing system or heating system, whatever. If there's a way that we could work together in coming up with those cost savings, and sometimes I know they do come out of other disciplines, but on my end of it, we frequently see that get cut. I did a church renovation, church project, and drawings go out and it goes to bid, and the contractor says, "Oh, hey, the owner's going to buy all the fixtures." Okay, where is he buying the fixtures from? So,
Yeah.
and we'd spent quite a bit of time working on this particular project. So that's the downside of what I do, because there's no guarantee that the work I've done is going to actually get purchased.
Mm-hmm.
We do this in hopes that it turns into a purchase, but it doesn't always. So,
Is there anything that you do to try and mitigate that risk? And
well, if we can, we try to get, if it's with an engineer, we try to get them, if they can say, "Hey, look, we'll, accept an equal if you do XYZ." And we've done that before. Sometimes our people bid projects and they'll come back and it wasn't our fixtures. But in order for us to actually secure the project, I have to provide photometric calculations that prove that what our product is going to meet or exceed what they have requested. And that's a way that we can leverage our expertise to make sure that the designs that we come up with are actually built the way that we have
Mhm.
them. I've had to put disclaimers on plans because the owner wanted something that I advised was not a good move, that this was not the way to do something, but this is the way they wanted it. So I've had to put stuff on my photometrics calc saying this layout is per owner's request, not per IES standard, so that it is not, I don't want my name on this because this is not how I would do it. We have
Mhm.
had that happen sometimes. Sometimes owners get very insistent on what they want, and it is not best practice. So that's another thing that I've run into.
Mm-hmm. Kind of bouncing off of that, speaking of what the owner might want might not have been what you would
Mhm.
design. How do
Yeah.
you determine those ideal like lighting levels or lighting types? What goes into that thought process for different types of spaces?
So right. So for me, the process is the first thing when I get a request for something. It's like, okay, what's going on in the space? So that's the first question, because everything that I'm going to try to figure out the answer for is going to be based on IES. That's, Illumination Engineer Society. So their IES recommendations, their criteria, plus what's happening in that space. The weird thing about IES is they don't cover every eventuality. They don't have anything for, pinball machine repair or whatever. They don't have specifics. So in that case, then what I do is I do my research and see what are the most similar aspects, what kind of tasks are being done there. So I have to get a lot of information at the forefront and try
Mhm.
to find out what this space is being used for. Once I know that, then I'll know how much light we need. Then we have to, also know the environment. Is it, overly hot, cold? What's indoor, outdoor, any special requirements? There's a lot that I get at the onset to figure out what it is we need. Once we know what we need, then we look at how is it going to be used by the end users. Do they need, is it going to be an area that has to have lighting controls? Is this a 24-hour operation? Is it what it is? Again, getting more granular as into the use of that space. Then we look at, what do you want in here? Does the owner have a preference? Some people want to do their whole office in downlights. Some want pendants, some want troffers, some want, so there's a what the owner wants. There's that to be considered. So then we take all those pieces, put all those things together, and then we give them options. Hey, this is what I think you should do, or this is what's going to work best for this situation. And they can say yes or no, and then we go on from there. So getting a lot of information at the onset is what I do to begin a project. So
Okay.
I tell people, I say, I ask a lot of questions because I don't like to guess. I
Mhm.
will run calculations for nearly everything. If you want a sign lit, I do a lot of those. You want a flag lit, I do a bunch of those. I will build a model and put the file in there, run the calc so that I know what it's going to do. I'm not going to guess on what it's going to do.
Mhm.
That's why I ask a lot of questions.
How do you go about balancing all of those wants, the aesthetics
Yeah.
from both an
Hmm.
owner and an architectural standpoint, but then
Yeah.
the functionality and, from my perspective, energy efficiency, heating and cooling
Yes.
impacts, all of
Hmm.
everything. How do you balance all of that?
Yeah, and that's where sometimes I lose the battle. I did a parking lot about 6 months ago in Virginia Beach, and it was an existing facility. The owner wanted all new LEDs because he had old technology. So I came up with them, keeping all the existing poles, putting on new heads. I was able to, efficiently light this thing and use maybe about, I think about maybe 8 to 10 less fixtures, which would have meant, and I was still got a good bit of illumination without adding anything. The current layout had 3 fixtures on every pole. So I
Mhm.
submitted that to them. They're like, no, 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 no. I want everyone replaced with a fixture. I'm like, well, we don't need to do that. So, but that's what he wanted.
Mm.
So then I put all 3 on there and had it at a lower lumen output because we don't need as much. Again, he said, no, I want this many lumens around it. We're overlighting this thing like crazy. Doesn't matter. That's what he
Mm.
wanted. So sometimes we run into that. It's like, it doesn't, I told him, I said, we could save money on power. We can save money on the initial install. We can save money.
Yeah.
Didn't matter. He wanted a 1-for-1 replacement for
Mm.
everything that was there. I'm like, okay. And I put it on my calc that this is not recommended, but this is what the owner wanted. Sometimes we lose out because he's the one that's going to struck the check for the fixture.
Yeah. So maybe it's not
So
always not
yeah,
always
it's not.
balanced.
No,
There's what's
sometimes
the
there
most
isn't.
important.
There's
Mhm.
just not a solution. And we had another right when we were first transitioning to LEDs, we had a little gift shop at the souvenir shop at the beach. This guy had this new space, and we gave him 2 layouts, one using his, strip fixtures, 2x2 fluorescents, and one using the LED, which was new technology. Well, the cost for the LED was a little higher, of course, because they were new at the time.
Yeah.
But the longevity of them was nowhere near what the fluorescent was. But the guy still picked the fluorescent because of the cheap upfront cost. But like Wayne said, he doesn't realize he's got to get a lift in there to change lamps every time those things go out.
Hmm.
And that's an added cost that he's not thinking of. People sometimes get really short-sighted at that first cost and not the overall cost.
Has
So
that been
again,
easier for people to recognize now that LEDs have been around longer, or
exactly.
is
Yes.
okay?
Now it's an easier sell.
Hmm.
It is. But a lot of people don't understand that we don't always have to do a 1-for-1. Like
Yeah.
I saw an office that came through and they said, yeah, they just want to do a 1-for-1 replacement. And I told Wayne, I said, we don't have to do a 1-for-1. We could do this differently. Then that's what they want to see. So then I have to get things that have a lower lumen output so I can meet something. So it's not always the most efficient, but at the end of the day, a lot of times with the design build things, it's what the owner wants. And it doesn't always make sense.
Mm.
We can only, like I say, we can only try to go so far with them
Right.
and I can't argue with them. I just try to make my case and explain why I chose this pattern. And if
Mm.
they want to come back and say, sometimes oh, okay, great, thanks. We go forward with it. And sometimes it's like, no, I want this for that. I want to take this box out, put this box in. Okay. But we don't have to do
Yeah.
that, so
Yeah. And that kind
technology's
of
improved. We
that
don't
kind of
have to
ropes
do
into
that.
another question, like how do you communicate those ideas and concepts to clients who are not technical experts, right? Like you have the
Right.
technical expertise, you have those reasons, but
Right.
not everyone you're talking to, most people you're talking to aren't going to have that
They
background.
no, and they don't And lighting is not, they're not all the same. They don't all behave the same,
Mhm.
and one fixture does not perform the same as the next. Even in swapping something out, you can buy two cylinders, they can look the same on the outside, but perform very differently. So I was called in to assist on a local restaurant project that the owner wasn't happy with because I didn't do the original design. I was called in after the fact and going on the job so I could see what the problem was. It's an open concept. The kitchen area where they were doing some prep and things, not the actual cooking, but a lot of the prep
Mhm.
work. They had a lot of 2x4 fixtures in there, and they had like over 80-foot candles, which is a lot of light, which is great for a kitchen. But the problem is it was open to the dining area, and the dining area was only measuring at 20-some foot candles. So we had this huge disparity, and that's what he was complaining about. He said it just felt so dark. And I
Mhm.
told him, I said, you've got 80 to 20, and that gap in between, it makes you feel like a cave over here. It makes it
Yeah.
worse. So we're trying to come up with a solution, something to bridge that. So eventually, and I don't know how it's turned out because I haven't talked to the architect after the fact. Let's put in some track in between to bump up that in between area to get that about in the 40s, something
Mm.
along in there so that your eye doesn't see this dark light, so we can kind of balance
Sort
things
of
out. So just
gradient
talking to
effect.
him to getting him to understand it's a perception of the light. Same thing like with exterior, like for parking lots or whatnot. You, you can dump a lot of light at the center, right under a pole, and you can get a decent average, but at the edges where it made on paper, it looks fine, but in real life, it looks very dark because if you've got this really hot area and then you've got this one that's not pitch black, but it's the disparity is such that it
Mm.
makes it feel darker. So uniformity of light is something that I spend a lot of time trying to get people to understand that the more uniform we can get that light level, the more comfortable it is, the more people feel safer, they're more relaxed. There's a better overall environment. When we have highs and lows in one space, it is jarring to the senses. And so
Yeah.
trying to get people to understand that's how I approach lighting. Now, not everybody does that. Some people design around have different ideas on design, but my first criteria is trying to get a uniform uh, light level in a space so that I don't have these highs and lows because it's just not comfortable.
Mhm. How did you kind of determine that that's what's important for you in the designs that you do?
I guess because I look for try to find a standard, if you will.
Mhm.
I'm big on kind of, I guess you could say, procedures or whatnot. If I kind of have a framework for myself, my goal is to put together the best possible package for that space. If it's a metal exam room, and especially with restaurants or things like this, you need to have multiple levels. I want to have the ambient, just a comfortable level for dining and just general things, but then I need to have another level when I want to do cleaning at night. So I like to have a secondary lighting, tucked up high as I can that's used at night. So we have a multiple levels. So different areas call for different types of lighting. Restaurants, hospitality, all those things need to have multiple levels of lighting. And in some office spaces, we need that. We need, especially for conference rooms, training spaces, those kind of things. You always have to think about what are the scenarios that are going to happen in that space.
Mm.
Your general office, you got lights, you got your either a knock sensor or a switch, and that there's not a lot of variation in duty there. And you've got large open areas, warehousing where you might have a shop in one corner and then racks and racks of merchandise on another. So you've got to look at the way that lighting is laid out so that we can accomplish both tasks. Restaurants, same thing. I want to have my mood, my ambient lighting that's very, intimate or depending on what the restaurant is. But then I need a secondary level when it comes to cleaning for the night. So there's different levels of lighting that occur depending on the space and the task.
Mhm. And beforehand when we were talking a little while ago, you'd mentioned kind of the temperature that you tend to design to and like the
Yes,
impact that
color
the different
temperature.
temperatures can
That
have.
is
Can you
huge.
explain that a
Yes.
little bit? Yeah.
Yes, yeah. My pet peeve is when we're out at night and I see houses that have two lights on the front and one's one color temperature and the other is another. I feel like just giving them both saying, here, change these out because it's just so distracting to me. No one else probably notices, or only other lighting people notice. But when you're designing a space, it's important to have a consistent color temperature. The warm the warm lights, the 27K or 2700, that's what we think of as your traditional incandescent light. That's what we have in most homes. It invokes a warm, cozy, relaxed atmosphere. Some people really like on the other end of the spectrum at 4,000. To me, that is a clinical white. It's almost blue. When you get to 5K, it does have hues of blue in it.
Hmm.
4K is very white light. I like 35 Kelvin because it is a nice bridge between 3000 K, which is a little more yellow, like 27. So you're thinking 27, more of the yellow look. When you get to 35, it's a little brighter. 3000, I'm sorry. 3500 is that nice bridge between 3 and 4K.
Hmm.
4K, to me, I find it too harsh and it's not comfortable. Now, in Europe, they like 4,000, 5,000 Kelvin. They use it in a lot of interior spaces. If I'm working on something, I will only use 4K if I have to.
Hmm.
Now, warehousing, it's okay. It's not a place where you're just kind of hanging out doing a lot of work. You're in and out moving merchandise, and that's fine. Or in some industrial spaces, we want 4, and sometimes people request 5K. Again, not exactly comfortable, but in industrial spaces, I get it.
Yeah.
Office interiors, 35 is that is my go-to, if you will. I standardize there. But again, when you're speccing fixtures, make sure your color temperatures are consistent because that is frequently a problem. Because if you've got one fixture in that space that's off from the others, it will be noticeable. It will
Yeah.
be noticeable.
Yeah.
Even to the non-trained eye. Somebody put a 4K lamp in our church sanctuary one, just swapping something out. And as soon as I walked in, I'm like, what is that? And I wasn't the only person that complained. Why is that light so bright? That one light. So he changed it, but it's like, that's just, you can't do that. Put one light that is different from everything else.
That kind of goes along with what you said about even the lighting levels. Like you
Hmm.
want consistency, otherwise you feel the difference and the
Yeah,
perception is really noticeable.
exactly. Exactly. And it's funny because when a job is done well, when it is well lit, you enjoy that space so much more. You're not going to be able to tell why you like it so much, but it is a feeling that it invokes when
Hmm.
it's well lit. But every single one of us knows how bad it is when you're especially a restaurant where you can't see, where you
Can't read the
just
menu, you can't, yeah.
exactly, exactly. When PF Chang's first opened, it was so dark in there. We could barely read the menu. We were holding the menus up alongside the, candle to try to get to see anything. They have since improved it quite a bit. But yeah, when they first opened, it was dark in there. So just realizing that y- what you're putting in there is not just decorative. I mean,
Hmm.
it has to function well also. And again, that's another thing that I can help someone with because you have to have the functionality along with the aesthetics. So, and sometimes that's hard.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's hard to find. And in those cases where when someone really wants this really pretty decorative fixture especially for a restaurant, I don't know what it's going to do because a lot of the decorative lighting manufacturers do not provide information on how that fixture performs because
Hmm.
they release new stuff every single year. Not like our big manufacturers who make tons of these things, who keep a stock for a year or two, or we have this resource. So if I don't know what that's going to do, I will make sure that there is some secondary lighting somewhere that I can count on so that I know that something's going to carry that. If pretty little crystal thing gives off 10 lumens, I've got something above it that's going to help the overall
Have that
lighting. So
redundancy built
yes,
in when you don't
yeah,
know. Okay.
exactly. So that
Interesting.
I don't want to leave anybody in the dark unless that's what they want. That's different. But having to think about what that fixture does, how it performs, and if there are deficiencies, or if you can't, like I say, I don't guess. I don't like to guess. I don't want to say, I think that'll work. I want to know what's going to happen. So
Mhm.
if I can't know how a fixture is going to perform, I'm going to make sure there's something else that's going to help us get to where it needs to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, Nicole in the chat says that she also hates when she's driving by and sees the two different colored
Oh my
light
gosh,
bulbs. So
that just makes me crazy. It
you're not
does
the
like,
only one.
I just have to, I just want to go here. I should just carry around a box of, what we lamps, light bulbs, most folks call them, and just say, look, just fix that. Or just, I will gift them to
Just here
you.
you
Just
go.
change
Yeah.
it. Please change it. So, yeah.
So kind of going on to a different topic. How do you stay updated on new lighting technologies and trends? Because that kind of stuff changes all the time.
Yes, it has changed. And I've been with JGM 11 years now. And in that time of 11 years, it has changed drastically. The nice thing about when you're in an agency, there are updates happening all the time. And then the bad thing about it is there are updates happening all the time. Because just when you're trying to get a handle on one particular line, they introduce something else. There's a whole new realm to learn.
Hmm.
We have a whole realm of, within the past 5 years, we've seen acoustic lighting come to on the forefront, where we've got fixtures that are not only lighting fixtures, but also are wrapped in acoustic materials that actually help with the reverb in these large open spaces with no ceilings. To now we have fixtures that are printed on 3D printing machines. So these are two new technologies that weren't even on anyone's radar 10 years ago.
Yeah.
But now we're seeing an explosion of both types, filling different facets. I had a request for one of our Printelux fixtures. They want to start putting these in this restaurant chain. So I'm working with a designer on that right now. So I would like, and the acoustic materials, they are expensive, and there's just no way around it. If you get one that's decent, the problem is you can't just stick felt on the side of a fixture and say that it's acoustic.
Mm.
People do. However, if you get something that's really decent that actually helps, that material is going to be half inch thick that's around it. And it really does deaden the sound. Light Art makes these, and so does Shaper. So I would love to see more of them in restaurants, because I don't know about you, but I've been in some places that you can't even hear the person across from you.
Oh yeah.
And you know how it is. It's these big open ceilings. Everyone loves the exposed look, but the problem is the sound. So I love the concept of marrying this sound management with a light fixture, because you have a 2-for-1. But it's 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 a steep outlay at the onset, and you've really got to have someone that's willing to invest in that. We sell them, but I would love to see more of those, because I just think they just make such good sense for
Mhm.
any kind of space where you're concerned about reverb.
Yeah.
Good, especially open offices. Um, all of us have been in that space where you're in a huge open room and you can hear what someone's saying, 20 feet away,
Yeah.
because
Someone's
nothing
on a
is of,
phone call across the room and you
yes,
know what
yeah,
everything's going on. Yeah.
you don't want to know, but yeah, you try really hard not to listen, but when it's just constant, you
Hmm.
can't get away from it. So.
That's really neat. I did not realize that that was even a technology that
Yeah,
existed.
and
Yeah.
and yeah, and so we have to, and that's trying to get though. And if another thing that I run into sometimes is when I'm trying to share something new with people, they're like, "Well, I don't want to see anybody. We don't have time." But I'm like, if you don't have time to learn about what's new, how is that going to impact your design? Because you're not going to have the latest technology either.
Mhm.
There's some folks that I would love to call on. I would love to show them something new, and they're like, "No, they're not really interested." And I'm like, "Well, okay then." you're hurting yourself, I feel like, if you're not staying up to date with what's on trend, what's
Yeah.
happening, what are the new capabilities. We have a lighting a LED tape manufacturer that we have. It's a neon replacement, actually. For They don't make neon lighting anymore, but we have so many applications for signage and other specialty items that this thing is great. It's tiny, it's flexible, it's waterproof. You can even submerge some of it. But if no one knows of this new
Yeah.
technology, then they don't know what they can do.
Are there
Again, that's another.
publications that
Yeah, yeah.
you
Well, now
can people can look
publications,
at?
yeah, there's a few. There are some. There's the LD, but again, you have to kind of be in the
You have to,
IAS society,
okay.
like the
Yeah.
LDNA, lighting and research. There's one that I get. It's really for interiors. I think it's furniture and lighting design, I think is the name of it.
Mm,
It's geared really more toward residential,
okay.
but some of the ideas are still relevant, that you can still use restaurants, hospitality, assisted living, some of the multifamily. A
Mhm.
lot of the concepts that I see in there are things that would translate well into commercial spaces. And I know that the design trend now is looking at different interior design and architectural magazines, newsletters, and such. That they trend is to have more home-like settings for these institutional spaces and
Mhm.
commercial spaces. So they want them to be more comfortable. Part of this is trying to get people back in the office from being, remote working, where they want it to be a more comfortable setting. So we have more lounge areas and some spaces like that. Some play, a nicer break room,
Mhm.
maybe a gym attached to a space, but just some ways to bring these commercial spaces and treat them more like hospitality spaces. We're seeing some of that in office design now. So that,
Okay.
I think, is interesting. And again, these are places where some specialized lighting, so maybe something in acoustics, or if you're really pushing for LEED or well building standards, where
Yep.
you want to look at these 3D printed fixtures. They're inexpensive. I won't say they're cheap, but they're cheaper than metal fixtures, we'll put it that way,
Mhm.
because they are printed. And we have a very short lead time on those. So these are some things that really fit with different types of projects. So
Hmm. Interesting.
yeah,
And
there's just tons of new stuff out there. And
yeah.
my thing is, and I tell people, if you've got questions on lighting, just send it to me, because I answer questions a lot. Hey,
Mhm.
I need something that looks like this, or I can't find something, or what would I use here, or how much light do I need for this space? We're a resource. We really are. We want to. I just encourage good design. I like the teaching aspect of how things work, to kind of try to break things down into smaller chunks. And if you can get people to understand how important lighting is, then I think
Mhm.
that's going to
Mhm.
move it up on the priority scale for our projects. Lighting can really make or break a space. We all know when, we don't necessarily, like I said earlier, we don't necessarily know that it's good lighting that we're experiencing, but we have all been in places where there's bad
Bad
lighting,
lighting. Yes.
and we know it off the bat,
Mhm.
so.
Yeah. And speaking of that, everyone, we are going to put Karen's contact info
Oh
in
yeah.
the chat.
Oh,
Megan
please
will share
do.
that.
Oh
So if you
yeah.
do
That
have questions,
Just shoot them to me.
reach out. Yeah,
Yeah. No,
definitely.
I'm going to be taking some time off for Christmas, but I promise I try to answer most emails within 24 hours, because I hate when I don't hear back from someone. So I try to be as quick as I can in getting back to, even if it's I don't know, I'll get back to you and give
Mhm.
you a time frame. But that's something I try very hard to stay on top of and answer as quickly as I can. So, and really aren't any dumb questions, because as you can tell already, I could talk about lighting for hours.
And we've only got one of them today, but it's
I
doing
know,
great.
I know, I know.
Unfortunately. Speaking of, we are coming close to the end of the time, so everyone,
Yes.
please remember to keep asking questions in the chat if you have anything.
Yeah.
Megan shared Karen's LinkedIn and email just now,
Thank you.
but I would also like to ask, for those of us in the audience who are not electrical engineers or lighting designers, and even for those of us who are, what are some of your top things that you want to communicate to us about that lighting design?
Okay, let's see. Know the space that you're designing for. I can't stress that enough. Ask the questions that need to be asked, because nothing's worse than thinking you're designing for A and then after the fact find out, oh no, they're going to be doing da da da
Mm,
here. Well, if I'd have known that, I'd have proposed something different. Always find out what's going on in the space. Don't be afraid to ask questions. As and from your suppliers, if you can't get a good answer and you or if someone won't answer you, go to the next person. Don't get hung up on sticking with just one thing. If you can't find what you need, ask somebody else. And if they can't give you specifics, 'cause I'm working on something right now where it's for a secure area and the guy can't give me a picture of the installation, but so I'm having to try to figure out what the installation is going to be like just by the way he's described it. So,
mm,
so there's those situations too, but I cannot stress enough, ask a lot of questions, get all the information that you can out at the beginning. Do your research. You can always look up things through the IES. Like I said, send it to me if you have a question. Look, I've got this little shoe shop, and I don't know how much light I'm going to need in here. Just what do I need? Do I need 50-foot candles, 500-foot candles, 1,000? What is it? I'm just throwing out some absurd numbers because we wouldn't have any of those. I think surgery is at 100, so that'll give you some
okay.
kind of variation. So there are different lighting levels. So find out those things at the onset. And then what's the budget look like? Can we go with a nice fixture here? Do I need to keep everything as cheap as possible? And please, 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 please do not spec stuff on Amazon from Amazon or from IKEA or from some of the other websites, because there are tons of them out there, because not everything is UL listed.
Mm,
And not everything is rated for commercial use. The problem is a lot of people pull things off the internet, but they don't read the fine print. Much of what's sold online is for residential use. It is not for commercial use. Most of the things online do not have a 5-year warranty. I would say 95 or better percent of what we deal with has a 5-year warranty. So be aware. These are the things you got to consider when you're looking at fixtures. Look at the warranty. Look at their ratings. Is it a UL listed? ETL. ETL is a European thing. It's
mhm,
pretty close to what UL is. UL is just another level that we insist upon here in the US. Also look at your power supplies and all those kind of things. See what the longevity is on them. How difficult is it to replace? So there's a lot of pieces that go into that. You can pick a great looking fixture, but if you have to have it the remote driver, okay, well, now you have to have access for that thing. How easy is it to get to? There's a lot of components that you have to think about when you're picking a fixture for different spaces or whatnot.
mhm,
So that, again, it is overwhelming for most people. I'm in it every single day of the week. I am in AGI, that's the calculation software that I use, nearly every single day of the week. So these are things that for me are just run-of-the-mill questions, but
mm,
for most engineers, most designers, this is not stuff that they're going to know, and they don't have to. That's why you have people like myself that you can say, hey, I got a question, and let us help you out with that. That's just, I guess just who I am. I like to help
yeah.
folks. I do. I enjoy that aspect of my job.
Mhm, mhm.
So,
Awesome. Well, as we close up, I'll ask one final question here.
okay.
What advice do you have for young professionals joining our industry?
Uh, Learn everything you can. Whatever job you're given, whatever task you're given, give it 100% and just keep taking on the next thing. If it's whether it's a program or even if you need to take a class, do your research, read up on it. I clip and save tons of articles on different things. If I see something on, hey, what's the best height for installing a pendant over a dining room or whatnot, I clip that thing and save it. I use Evernote a lot. I'll clip stuff and save it. Something on stable lighting, believe it or not, I've done some horse arenas and things like that. If I come across an article that's got good information in it, design thoughts, I save it so that I build this library for myself that I can go back to and say, what was that thing on the high bay fixture? I can go back through my files, find that resource and use it. Keep learning. That's huge. Just keep learning. Don't turn down the opportunity to learn something new, whether it's a new software program or just some other skill. How to talk in front of people. I know that's really daunting. I've learned how to do that better than when I first started out.
Yeah.
But
And thank you
I
for
can,
providing an opportunity for us to learn today too, to kind of go off of that.
yeah, like I say, I would love to help out just any way that plays out. Like I say, if you buy our stuff, great. If you don't buy our stuff, that's fine too. That's not like I'm going to cut you off or not answer your question. So I'm here for you. And thanks so much for just the opportunity to do this. It's been a lot of fun, and I appreciate everyone's attention and the opportunity to share some of the passion that I have for lighting.
Yeah, we appreciate it. Steve says in the chat that he particularly loves hearing about the thought processes and challenges of other designers. So thank you so much for coming on. And
you're welcome.
And
You're
Janice
quite
also
welcome.
says, as a non-expert, the way that you shared the information was easy for her to understand.
Well,
And I
good.
agree.
I'm so glad.
I agree with that.
I'm glad.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Thank you
Well,
so
great.
much.
Thank you again.
Yeah, I guess I'll give a little bit of a closing.
Okay.
Anyone can keep typing stuff in the chat. That'll stay up for a while. We'll be able to access it.
That sounds good.
Just like all of our previous sessions, this one has been recorded and it will be uploaded to our YouTube channel. You just have to search Thompson Consulting Engineers on YouTube, and we have a playlist for all of our women in construction sessions. And
awesome.
Definitely would love to have people subscribe and then share to anyone else who wasn't able to make it here today. And we want to make this something that's available to anybody who wants to learn and participate. And definitely. And we appreciate everyone taking their time over their lunch to join us today. Hopefully you can join us next year as well. We'll be kicking back off in January, actually. Believe it will be the 15th, and we'll be talking to Lauren Perry, who is an architect with HBA and principal. And we definitely look forward to seeing everyone there. And Megan shared the link in the chat to register. So please take a look at that. And yeah, again, Karen, thank you so much for your time and your knowledge.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Okay, thanks again. And Merry Christmas to everyone.
Yes, Merry Christmas. And hopefully a Happy New Year's as well. Yeah.
Yes, it will be. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. We'll hopefully see you next time.